Uh, oh, we're recording now. So we're going to give, just make sure my controls are working here. There we go. So we're going to provide a little bit of an overview of our department and what we do, and more specifically get into our energy and asset management division. The City Facilities Group has a number of innovative partnerships and projects that we've been working on. So we do want to share some of those with you and express some of the, the experience and success that we've had with that. And then we're going to get more specifically into how our journey has been so far, where we've kind of come from with decarbonization and where we're going in the future. So facilities management and construction services, we're a team of more than 40 people now, which includes admin support, operation coordinators, supervisors, custodians, carpenters, electricians, millwrights, plumbers, energy systems engineering technologists, architects, and engineers of all types. So we have a really diverse team, and one of the neat things that we're going to kind of show you, I hope, today is how we're sort of trying to really steer all of that experience and knowledge that's in all those different members really toward a common goal, which is really quite exciting for us. The department itself has 3 divisions. They're distinct, but quite integrated. We have facilities management. Daryl Peterson's with us today, who is the manager of that team. Facilities construction, on the other side, is responsible for, I should back up. Facilities management looks after the day-to-day operational elements of facilities, planned and reactive maintenance, and a wide variety of capital projects associated with maintenance and keeping facilities running smoothly. On the other side of the department, facilities design and construction and project management is really a lot of the larger capital projects for new design of facilities, major renovations, and a lot of other dynamic capital projects. And Russell and I like to imagine that we're in the middle of the department, often bridging between the 2 divisions in energy and asset management. We've really worked over the last year and a half that the division has been, since it was created, to strategically align the energy management services that were happening along with the asset management activities, so that we can plan for the future and make sure that the work that we're proceeding with is optimized so that we can achieve the goals that we have for climate leadership as well. So facilities at the city, we have somewhere in the order of about 160 facilities. It does change as we manage assets and depending on how you kind of classify and consider, but in that order, and that includes community centers and fire stations and heritage buildings. And overall, the replacement value exceeds $1.5 billion and 2.7 million gross square feet of gross floor area. We have new facilities, and some of our heritage facilities are more than 210 years old. So there's a pretty wide variety of needs and systems within all of these buildings and individual requirements that we are constantly working with to try and keep facilities operating so that they're meeting the levels of service for the community, but also planning for the future. How are we going to maintain and renew these facilities, and also plan for the ongoing kind of transition to net zero that we're going to talk about. In terms of energy systems, more specifically, facilities management and construction services recently took over the services for all of our EV charging stations for ongoing operation and maintenance of those locations. We also have 28 building automation systems for energy intensive facilities. There are 2 ground source heat pump systems. One is at the airport and has been there for quite some time. And with the recent construction of the East End Community Center, it also has a geo-exchange system. We have now 15 distinct solar PV systems, and this is actually an old number on the presentation we noted yesterday, and that we're really generating more than a megawatt now of capacity, and so that's probably closer to the amount to generate or to power 100 homes potentially. So it's something that's quickly increasing, and we'll talk more about that. That's one of the initiatives we're really moving forward on. With all of our facilities, to keep track of all of the energy consumption data, we have more than 500 utility meters, and over the last number of years, that's been one of the significant undertakings of our energy management work, which is to verify existing accounts and to understand consumption and to be more deliberate and accurate in how we can budget and plan for energy requirements and facilities. So the department overall is a pretty integrated hub now. Over the last, I would say, decade, we've worked toward having a shared services model that really these services are applied throughout the corporation. And it includes, as I mentioned, maintenance, asset management, energy management, support for special projects throughout the corporation, space planning and utilization, construction, project management, and we're going to talk a little more about learning hubs as well. And one of the benefits that or the main benefits that we've seen through having kind of a shared services model for all of our facilities throughout the city is that we can ensure compliance with our legislative requirements, we can reduce risks and improve health and safety. We're proactively planning for maintenance activities and renewals and energy management activities now for the whole portfolio, which is really exciting, and ensuring that we have reliability-centered maintenance, which means that assets are actually going to achieve the life cycles we're planning for. Through this, we generate cost savings, and the integrated approach, as we'll talk about, is really key in being effective in how we spend tax dollars to renew our facilities and upgrade. So it's a full kind of integrated planning for the transition to net zero. So more specifically, our energy and asset division has a lot of really interesting activities, and some of the ones that I really wanted to hone in on here are looking at building condition assessments and asset management planning, which really looks at trying to understand our assets. What do we have in our inventory? What's the age, condition, the cost of expenditures that are going to be required? We're doing retro commissioning and deep carbon energy audits for locations. Russell's going to talk more detailed about that program, which has been quite successful. Energy modeling and verification, where we're looking at how are we using energy in our facilities and how can that be optimized. And then for our building automation system platform at 28 locations, we're not only monitoring how building systems are being used in buildings, but also looking at how can we optimize, the use of our buildings while maintaining occupant comfort and levels of service. So one of the things that we've really focused on over a number of years in the past, and I've recently become much more involved with this as well in the department, is a number of innovative partnerships with external educational institutions and other industry partners. And we've found that this is a really effective way to stay connected with the innovation that's happening in industry, and also to have an opportunity to provide real world experience to young professionals who are coming up as well. It's a really great symbiotic relationship. And a number of the people who are on the presentation today have already probably spoken with us in other presentations or other meetings. And we're finding that the shift of the industry to through decarbonization to net zero is really we really need to work together, because as you're going to see, not all the solutions are known at this point. And so we're finding that these partnerships are going to be one of the best ways that we can help to illuminate what new technologies are working and how we can really be most effective with that transition. So one of the programs that you may have seen in recent media is the Energy Systems Engineering Technology Placement Program that we have with St. Lawrence College. So in recent years, this has evolved to have their third-year class work together to do a energy audit of one of our facilities. And it's really now, in the past year, it's become a deep carbon energy audit. So they've looked at City Hall, British Whig Building, Portsmouth Olympic Harbor, and recently this year looked at the pump house, and that project really helped to look at how could we completely decarbonize all of the systems at that location. So it's been quite successful. Another partnership that we're involved with is with Queen's University, the University of Toronto, as well as a number of industry partners looking at low carbon concrete applications. And this really is, the research teams are actually looking at how can we optimize structurally the geometry of members, so we're using less concrete, and also where the concrete is, where the CO2 emissions are most intense with production in higher strength, higher cement content concrete. How can we reduce, or how can we only use that high strength concrete where it's really needed in a structure? And if you can optimize that, you really can reduce the amount of emissions that are associated with infrastructure that uses concrete. And you can imagine that on a really large project, there's a real benefit that can be had. Concrete production accounts for a significant amount of emissions in construction. So we're really excited to participate with this, and the research will find its way into concrete design standards that will be used by the industry and through, in the international community for design. So we're looking at currently building we're working on a joint funding venture to build a demonstration structure at our Kingston Fire and Rescue Training Center. So more to come on this in the future as the design is mapped out. Oh, I'm just stuck. There we go. A few of the other projects I just want to quickly introduce, and then I am going to turn it over to Russell to share more significant detail. One of the exciting ones is at arena facilities. We're looking at Invista specifically piloting a new type of dehumidification system, which uses a chemical desiccant in lieu of natural gas to dehumidify air within the facility. So that's something we're looking at in the very near future, as well as a number of other operational enhancements to arena facilities. Air to water heat pumps, air to air heat pumps and dual fuel units. As well, the city energy team is also looking into alternative energy purchasing strategies, including renewable natural gas and other things. So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing, and actually, Russell, so you can have control, I'm going to let you take over.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks everyone for joining today. Just gonna make sure everyone can see my screen okay. How's that? Is everyone able to see that okay?
Looks good.
Perfect. So again, thank you everyone for taking the time today. It's kind of humbling to hear even my name mentioned as people are trying to we say steal the ideas, but really it's about collaboration, and honestly we're very open after this presentation. Anytime, please reach out to Dan or I to collaborate on any of these partnerships or get ideas and share what's happening across the city. So to put into some context, what is the main source of GHG emission for the City of Kingston facilities, so municipal facilities specifically? Very similar to the rest of Ontario, about 80% of our GHG emissions come from the burning of natural gas, primarily to heat our facilities. And the remaining 20% comes from electricity through the emission factor from the grid. So it's very similar for the City of Kingston. It's actually closer to 79% for us as opposed to 80, but essentially the same as the rest of Ontario. In terms of our actual energy consumption, so the gigajoules of energy used, it is almost a 50-50 split between natural gas and electricity. So again, it really shows that even 50% of our energy is being used through natural gas. 80% of our emissions are coming from that fuel source. In the third column, you can see the actual cost of that energy. So historically, natural gas has been significantly cheaper than electricity, which is why our costs, only about 22% of our operating costs for facilities are coming from the burning of that natural gas, and 65% of that is from electricity. The other 14% is a combination of fuel oils and propane to heat some of our more rural facilities. So this is really showing again is in previously, and I'll say maybe 10 years ago, the onus was on reducing energy use and reducing costs, which is why a lot of industries were switching to natural gas, using cogeneration, things like that were able to reduce their energy use and their costs. Whereas we're shifting that perspective now, and really the primary focus of what we're doing and what we're going to continue to do is reducing the use of fossil fuel burning, which is the primary driver of our GHG emissions. So part of that is through electrification and a few other strategies that we'll talk about today. So a little bit more perspective, some context on Ontario's electricity supply. As many are probably aware, Ontario was one of the most successful electricity distributors in the world to decarbonize through the removal of coal-fired generation in the early 2000s. So you can see kind of on this little spike here, this is when we were burning about as much coal as we possibly could to generate electricity, and our grid emissions were quite carbon intensive. And through the removal of that coal burning, we're able to reduce the GHG emission impact of electricity in Ontario. What we're seeing and what we're going to see over the next couple of years is now an increase of those GHG emission factors from the grid in Ontario through the use of natural gas burning, and that's being used to offset the need for electricity that's coming out of the refurbishment of the nuclear plants in Ontario. So we are expecting about a 300 to up to 700% emission factor increase from the use of electricity to heat our facilities. So it is adding a little bit more complexity to our short-term targets as we try to electrify our heating sources and use less natural gas and more electricity. This is actually making it a little bit more difficult to achieve our targets. One thing I really want to highlight though, even with a 700% increase in GHG emissions on the electricity grid, we would need to have the emission factor increase by thousands of a percent just to make the use of electricity through a heat pump heating as carbon intensive as a standard natural gas heating source. So even through all of this natural gas, intensive electrical grid over the next decade or so, it is still far more GHG emission. It's far less GHG emission intensive for us to use electricity and heat pumps to heat our buildings as opposed to natural gas, which again galvanizes the need for us to continue to decarbonize our heating sources. We do expect that with future policies, the ISO has indicated that they are aiming for a net zero grid. So we are hoping that future policies actually continue to decrease that emission factor from the electrical grid, and that'll make things even easier for us to decarbonize. So what does that really mean in the context of municipal facility heating and heating of facilities? Ultimately, we have hit and we're very close to hitting what we're calling the tipping point of heating with a heat pump as opposed to a natural gas burning appliance. We are almost at the point where it is just as cost effective to install a heat pump style system to heat a building as it is to install a natural gas burning appliance. And that's really important because as a municipality, we are responsible to the taxpayer, and we do have to maintain our operating costs at a reasonable level. So, if we had had this conversation 10 years ago about just electrify all of our heating sources, the operating costs of our facilities would have increased very substantially. but that's not really the case anymore, which again really helps motivate and drive all of this electrification forward, because for the next 15 years, our facilities, we're going to continue to install heat pumps, electric heating sources, and a combination of both of those. And our operating costs are actually going to maintain the same that they are today. And over time, they'll actually decrease, which again, so now we're not only reducing our GHG emissions, but we're being cost effective and reducing our operating costs as much as we can. So what you can see in this, this kind of the lower red line is the gas heating, the expectation of gas heating costs based on a $15 per ton carbon tax. So again, as long as that carbon tax maintains its current trajectory and the trajectory of electricity, the cost of electricity maintains where it is right now, that tipping point is happening around 2026, where an electric heat pump is just as cost effective as a natural gas burning appliance for a commercial facility. And what that means is that moving forward, we don't need to consider the natural gas burning option as being the cost effective option, because it really does not need to be the case anymore. So again, it's very exciting for us because, you know, the business case writes itself in this case. The cost savings are there and the GHG emission savings are there. And the equipment that we install today is going to far outlast the tipping point that we're seeing. So if a standard system lasts 20 years, we're not going to install a natural gas burning appliance after 2025, because it really does not make sense anymore, and it's actually going to cost us more in the long run. What you see on this higher price forecast, this is just something that the IPCC median scenario is recommending, I think $1,100 a ton carbon tax backstop. This is not something that we ever see happening in the federal government, just in the current political climate that we're in. But this is just highlighting that if the carbon tax did increase to that level, the amount of energy or the amount of cost savings that would be there by using heat pump is just that much more significant. So that's where it really indicates, again, that price on carbon is very important to change the behaviors of industry. So a little bit more context before we jump into all the exciting work that we're doing. So on March 5th, 2019, Council motion declared a climate emergency, as I think everyone is aware. And on December 21st, 2021, Council endorsed the Climate Leadership Plan, along with the corporate GHG emission targets, a short-term target of 15% by 2022, 30% by 2030, and our long-term carbon neutrality by 2040. This is just something, again, that really galvanized the need for us to continue to reduce our GHG emissions. One thing I do want to point out is the Facilities Management Construction Services Group. We've had the energy and asset management plan before the climate emergency was declared. So we have been doing this for a long time. We've been reducing our emissions and our costs. And what this really did is just opened up another stream of funding in order to continue to aggressively decarbonize. So we'll jump into maybe some very technical information here. This is the stuff that I'm very excited about. We have continued to, and we will continue to do major boiler system replacements at a lot of our major facilities. And these are very large buildings like the Grand Theatre and the British Whig Building and 1211 John Counter Boulevard, major boiler system replacements. We're continuing to update our building automation systems and actually integrate artificial intelligence into those BAS systems. So as Dan mentioned, we're not just using it to create a setback for a temperature. We're actually using it to optimize the facility and identify small issues that a human eye may not be able to notice, but over a period of time, an analytical code will be able to delineate that there is a heating valve that's leaking or something is overcooling. And all of that is being integrated directly into our building automation system. So it's a true brain of the building that's understanding what's going on. We're continuing to replace oil heating equipment, and we're very excited to say we don't have any more buildings that are heated by oil anymore. We replaced 2 oil heating systems last winter with electric alternatives, and even on -30, there was a couple days this year, and those buildings performed great, which we're very excited about. We're always installing variable frequency drives on pumps and fans, integrating that into our automation systems, again, optimizing how the facility runs, electrifying all of our domestic hot water tanks, again, removing all of that fossil fuel. One of the big programs we're implementing and we've been going through the past couple of years is LED lighting retrofits, which is really that low-hanging fruit. This is really just standard facilities maintenance at this point. So as the light systems reach their end of life, LED replacements are going in to reduce our electricity consumption. One of the major successes we've had in 2022 is we actually more than doubled our solar PV capacity. So we've installed over 700 kilowatts of solar PV in 2022. That's on some of our new facilities as well as some of the existing ones. So again, that pushed us our generating capacity to over 1 megawatt this year. Again, very excited about that. Some other things not indicated on this slide, and just to again highlight how much we are trying to push the envelope. We're piloting a water treatment solution that actually can go into heating and cooling systems, reduces the surface tension of water, and actually increases the heat transfer into our heating systems. We're also looking at an enzyme cleaning solution for our heating and cooling coils on our HVAC systems that can actually reduce the fan load through a dirty coil by up to 50%. So there's all of these things that we're piloting on one facility, making sure that it works, that it functions, that it's safe, and that it's compliant, and then we can roll that out to the other 160 facilities that we have. So something I'm going to jump into next, and one of our major success stories over the past couple of years has been what we call a retro commissioning and deep carbon energy audit program. So the 60, Dan mentioned, we have 160 plus buildings in our portfolio, but the largest 60 of those facilities actually account for 90% of our GHG emissions. So we've identified those top 60 facilities as the targeted retrofits that we need to complete first. And those are the major buildings that everyone thinks of as a city building. So we have implemented what we're calling a stage 1 and stage 2 retro commissioning and deep carbon energy audit program at these top 60 facilities. What a retro commissioning program is, ultimately, it takes a holistic engineering view of a building as it has been built and as it's been used over the years that it's in use. And what it does is it optimizes the existing building to make sure that it is as efficient as it can be in its current operating context. It's a lot of very technical language to throw around, but ultimately we have consultants and engineers and technical trades going through our facilities and making sure that it is operating as efficiently as possible with the existing equipment that's in place. And what that does is that actually has reduced between 7 and 9% of our energy use for every single building that we do this in. So, and this is a very collaborative partnership with Daryl and the facilities maintenance team, because as we go through these buildings, we're identifying a lot of repairs and maintenance items that we can add into our preventative maintenance program. So not only are we reducing the energy use today, but we've also identified ways to continue to keep that reduction in place over long periods of time. What that's actually allowed us to do is to ensure that the assets that are in our buildings, so the boilers, the rooftop units, all of the major mechanical systems actually reach their full life cycle. So we're not replacing systems before they reach their end of life, which again is not a sustainable way to do things. So we've recommissioned the buildings, we've integrated it right into our maintenance processes, and we're making sure that all of the systems we have reach their full end of life. And then when they reach their end of life, that's where Dan and I can come in and recommend the low carbon alternative for that particular piece of equipment. So that's where the stage 2 of this program comes in. And that same consultant who is doing our recommissioning program is also doing a deep carbon audit of our facility, identifying GHG emission measures to reduce by 80% per facility. So the top 60 facilities, which use 90% of our GHG emissions, have a targeted plan. Each individual site has a plan based on the systems that are in place. So we're not looking at an overarching general strategy. This really is a targeted facility by facility approach. because some of our facilities like City Hall are, over 200 years old. So it's a very different solution for a 200-year-old heritage facility as opposed to a 20-year-old administrative site. So every single carbon audit that we have is very specific and is integrating our current asset management funding and adding in that energy management funding so that we know we can actually achieve that low carbon alternative for the future state of that site. So we've talked about, retrofits, energy conservation measures. We've talked about recommissioning, but what about new buildings? And we're very excited. In 2022, we actually opened up some fairly significant new facilities, including our very first net zero energy site, the Kingston Fire and Rescue Maintenance Garage located on Terry Fox Drive. So there's no natural gas on site at all for this location, and 100% of its energy is offset by the solar system installed in the field behind it. So it's in-floor heating and a full maintenance garage, a 3-bay maintenance garage, completely net zero with a very high-performing building envelope. On the right-hand side, you can see the new Kingston East End Community Center, and this is a near net zero building. And when we say near net zero, it's because only 95% of its energy use is offset by solar PV, which again is a very significant portion of that. So we're very, very proud of this building. Fully heated by a ground source geo-exchange system. Again, 95% of its energy is offset by the solar PV generation on the roof and on the carports. Very high performance building. And we expect that over the next 15 years, as technologies evolve and solar PV systems evolve, we'll be able to very easily make this facility net zero. To put in perspective, this is a massive community center that uses the same amount of GHG emissions as 2 small single family homes over the year. So again, this very, very low carbon footprint for this facility. So what does all of this mean? Again, I've thrown around a lot of technical words. We've said a lot of, very nice sounding things, but, what does this all come out to? And ultimately, we are very, very proud that we have actually achieved our council mandated GHG emission reductions between 2018 and 2022. We have exceeded 500 tons of GHG emissions from our facilities. And during that same period of time, we actually added 5 major facilities to our portfolio. So that's what this graph is on the left-hand side of the screen. You can see that the number of facilities continues to increase every single year. So the Rideau Heights Community Center, the Fleet Maintenance Garage, the 2 sites I mentioned previously, the Central Library renovation, have all added square footage to our facility portfolio. And we have been able to stabilize and actually reduce our GHG emissions over time, even though our facility square footage has increased. During this same period, again, because we are accountable to the taxpayer, we have been able to actually level out the cost of our operating for facilities and avoided a total of $250,000 per year so far from operating costs. So again, what does the integration of facilities management construction services mean? Well, it means we can access asset management funding and energy management to combine those together and reduce our GHG emissions. It means we're able to reduce our operating costs. It means our facilities are compliant and well maintained. And all of this really indicates that what we're doing is working. And I don't know if you can tell, but we're very proud of that fact. Everything that we've been doing for many years is actually achieving the targets that have been set out. So what does this look like long term? Right, we it's not just ECMs and energy conservation retrofits that will get us to net zero. It's actually a very integrated and iterative approach that changes as technologies change. So we've achieved our 2022 facility related GHG emission targets, and we are currently in the process of developing what that roadmap to net zero looks like. So we have our bottoms up approach. We have all of our facility specific energy audits and deep carbon assessments. But now we need to understand holistically across the corporation, across 160 buildings, what is the true cost of net zero? And not only what is the true cost, but what is the impact to our local utility providers? What is the electrical distribution system upgrades needed inside the facilities to electrify everything? But what is also the electrical requirements for, Tom is on the line here, What is the requirements for utilities Kingston and Hydro One and all of our suppliers, including the IESO, who can plan all this? Because that's really part of this this challenge that we face, is we all have to work on this together. We can't just say we're going to electrify everything tomorrow, because the province of Ontario is not prepared for that. So fuel switching and optimized renewals is something that that is going to be a major portion of our GHG emission reductions. So again, electrify as much as we can, and optimize the renewals to line up with our asset management plan. We'll have near or net zero new builds, depending on the budget availability at that time. We're always going to be driving forward with renewables. Solar PV is something you don't really need to sell anyone on anymore, because it just makes sense. It's the same cost as grid electricity, so it's just something that we're going to do. We're always going to look at energy storage and other alternatives to, again, help with the electrical distribution impacts that we're going to be creating. Potentially energy storage is a part of the solution for that. And then we like putting this in the slides, and I think if anyone tells you they have the solution to net zero today, they're lying to you. But honestly, there's a portion of it that that we still need to figure out, whether that's through new technologies or continued partnerships with Queen's and St. Lawrence College and industry partners. You know, the continued electrification and improvement of heat pump systems. That's going to be something that the reason we're making this an iterative and a fluid approach is because as technologies change, we may change to adjust and achieve our targets sooner through newer technologies. As Dan mentioned, we are also looking at power purchase agreements, renewable energy credits, renewable natural gas. Virtual net metering is something we can all lobby the province for, but all of these different methods are ultimately how we are planning to get to net zero. And we're hoping by mid next year, we will have a true cost model of what this actually looks like for the municipal facilities. And then, you know, across the city, I think the community is doing the same thing. So the ongoing work and future work that we're doing, at this point, we are on track to hit our 30% by 2030 target. This is with the current funding models that are in place today. So we are on track to achieve that 30% reduction by 2030, which is, you know, 6.5 years away. It's very, very close. And sometimes it's sobering for us to think about how close that really is. We're going to continue completing deep carbon energy audits and retro commissioning on a 4 to 5 year cycle. And that's moving to internal services. So that's something that our group is going to continue to do every 4 to 5 years to make sure that we are optimizing our renewals, make sure that we've identified the right technologies, and make sure our systems are reaching their end of life. We're going to continue adding solar PV anywhere and everywhere that we can. We will continue to track our progress with targets, use weather normalization, and report on the savings that we've achieved, and make sure that we're using the IPMVP protocols to measure and verify exactly how much energy we're saving. And ultimately, we need to do some further studies to identify what those additional opportunities are. Some of the challenges that we're facing, we've talked about this a little bit here, the electrical grid constraints due to the electrification of not only facilities, but also transportation and other major industry. Everyone is trying to electrify at the same time, and we really need to continue to work very closely with our partners, including Hydro One and Utilities Kingston, to make sure that we can do this properly together and at the same time. The increased capital costs of upgrading systems from a like for like, so a natural gas furnace to a natural gas furnace, there is an increased cost upfront to installing a heat pump system. So that is some of the constraints that we're working within. And we're hoping to solve that by integrating the asset management funding with the energy management funding. And that's going to be one way we can overcome that challenge. New and ultimately unknown today technologies will be required to get us to that ultimate net zero target. Major changes in the construction industry, including human resource challenges. You know, there's a mass retirements happening across the skilled trades, and they are the ones that we need to install all of these very complex systems and major programs. So I think we're going to see some constraints at that front. And ultimately, some of the challenges we're facing is a lack of common international framework for carbon pricing. So that there's no, there's no mandated by the federal government or the provincial government that you must report on your energy in this way or at this time. And I think that is something that we can all work towards is having these common languages and common international measurement and verification processes that we all use. And we're very cognizant that we don't want to greenwash. We don't want to say that we're doing things that are sustainable that maybe are not sustainable in one way or another. Everyone said natural gas is better than coal, but you don't take into consideration the fracking that's involved with the extraction of that natural gas. Right? So we really don't want to greenwash what we do. Finally, with every challenge comes great opportunity. One of the main opportunities that we're very excited for, and I'm a ESET grad myself, so I take that one, I'm a little biased towards that program, but the innovative partnerships that we have between the City of Kingston, St. Lawrence College, Queen's University, and some of our private partners, stuff that we're very, very proud of. And the energy audits that these ESET students are able to create for us are unbelievably accurate, and they're as good as the professional consulting work that we get. So that's my final plug for ESET, but if you want to hire ESET grads, they can help you guys out. One of the major opportunities that we're seeing is that this is an opportunity for a sustainable transition, including clean energy, better air quality, natural light, inclusion, collaboration, community hubs. This is our opportunity to change fundamentally the way that we do things, the way that we run cities, in order to make our cities work together and bring everybody up together. We don't want to leave anybody behind. These are global issues that we're dealing with, but there's a lot of local solutions that are available. There's changing job markets, opportunities for businesses and entrepreneurs. Life Cycle is one of the local success stories of this changing market. And finally, the most important one is climate and economic resiliency for the city. We want to make sure that the city continues to be the great city that it is 200 years from now. And this sustainable transition that we're going through is going to be part of that. So to summarize it, net zero new construction is always what we're going to aim for. Reliability center maintenance, working with our maintenance team, continuous commissioning and optimization of facilities, ongoing alignment of our asset renewals and targeted retrofits, combining that funding together, and then ultimately embracing new technologies and innovative partnerships is how we see ourselves getting to net zero by 2040. So I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time to listen to this sometimes highly technical conversation today. And as I mentioned earlier, if there's any questions, we're open to that here. But if anyone wants to reach out afterwards, feel free to send us an email. We're very open and collaborative. Thank you very much.
Wowza. Dan, Russell, thank you very much. That's awesome overview of everything going on. And you've come to the right audience, I'd say, as far as keeping it technical, because we dive in pretty deep around here. So that's marvelous. There's some questions in the chat. I will maybe start with them just so that we cover those off, and then if other people want to raise their hand, shout out as they can. I know I've got some questions too. Well, there's quite a few in the chat. Here's a bit of a maybe tongue-in-cheek one. What about eliminating the gas monthly service charge for customers who have replaced their gas using appliances with electric ones?
That's an interesting question. I think. Well, hopefully we'll see more incentives in that. We won't put Tom Brackenbury on the spot here. He doesn't. He's not in charge of the pricing, but yeah, I really do hope we see some other incentives that come through.
Okay, and maybe on the same front, will the city ensure no new residential gas stoves are installed in new home construction?
It'll be interesting to see how those programs evolve. Go ahead, Russell.
Yeah,
I was just saying, I think it's just to kind of make it a bit more clear. Our particular responsibilities are just facilities, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We don't have much say in all of that, but
anyway,
yeah.
Good questions for the broader group. Stuff to think about. Mark had made the comment, the IPCC Paris Accord of 2015 says that the world should reduce GHGs by 50% by 2030. And will the city achieve this? And I think you more or less addressed that, but
Yeah, so one of the things to look forward to later this year, I know our climate leadership team, Julie Salter-Keene, is bringing forward some additional information about the city looking at our current targets and whether there's any opportunity to accelerate. So there is still a lot of work happening, both in, so as you saw, in facilities and in our transportation and fleet areas. So that's all I can really, I think, say at this point, but it's something we're looking at, whether there is any possibility. We in facilities currently, with the available funding for asset management and that, all of this alignment, there will still be a challenge, but we're generally feel that we're on track with our 30%. And we're still doing more work to figure out what that, how that roadmap overall and the cost really starts to shape up and what that will be.
perfect. Actually, I'm gonna call on Spencer. He had a fairly long question, and I'm not sure I do it justice. So, Spencer, if you're still on the call, do you want to do it live?
Sure. Sorry about the convoluted question, but I'm just wondering, is there a way or any analysis or data that's saying a way to reduce the physical footprint of the city so that we need less HVAC? You said 90% of your GSGs come from your largest buildings, and I'm tongue-in-cheek made a comment that it's like saying the Chinese are the largest emitters, while the average Chinese person is there emitting 3 times less than the average Canadian. Is there a way of building up the city?
Yep.
You have to use more concrete, but, and this is a broader question for for all of us, that by shrinking the number of HVACs we need, and not curtailing the growing vertically, is there a way of saying the GSGs per work hour, or pardon the term, man hours? Is there any analysis in that, a way we can use architecture and so forth, or combine city groups, city buildings that they're all using one low-hanging fruit, heat pumps and so forth, rather than having several 160 plus buildings?
Yeah, this is a really great and complicated question. For our corporate facilities, I think, as we were kind of showing you our shared services and our kind of alignment, our strategic alignment of energy and asset management, we're definitely taking a look at our space planning and utilization, and how we use our facilities, and trying to rationalize all of our assets. And when we say we have 160 facilities, all of those are not, those 50 to 60 of the largest ones are the ones that you imagine that are more like community centers and fire stations. So the city is definitely taking a look at how we use our assets. In the wider community, I think there's definitely more of a discussion that the city's also working through at a planning level, intensification and the urban boundary itself, and how efficient we are with our infrastructure overall. At this point, we don't currently have specific metrics of GHG emissions per person, but it might be something that does find its way into the carbon pricing of the future, and how we understand where and how we spend money on infrastructure. So it's a really interesting idea.
Yeah, and the top 60 buildings, again, as Dan mentioned, there are a lot of our major facilities, right? So 1211 John Counter Boulevard campus, like those buildings are housing a lot of municipal employees. And the reason we focus on those is, if we can reduce the GHG emissions of those major facilities, the remaining 10% are very small park buildings, and those ones are fairly simple to be able to electrify. it's these major campuses that require, you know, commercial level HVAC systems. They're a little bit more complex and costly to get us to that net zero portion, which is why we're starting with the most intensive facilities.
Yeah. Well, good on you to do the hard stuff first. Had a more of a comment here. Just saying a great update and sharing the story with the public. I don't know how, you know, you go about doing that. Could, as they say, unleash citizen pent-up demand to go solar on their homes, and, you know, spur more, you know, citizen activism. And the comment was, you know, in track, run through the finish line, not to it. So, you know, how do we get everybody going on that? And
so one thing, and I will say, we're an internal facing group, so we serve the corporation. So historically, we have not been great at communicating all of the stuff that we do, but we are working closely with our communications team, and you'll see. I mean, the ESET partnership, you know, you're going to start to see a little bit more coming out about some of the work that we're doing. So please stay tuned for that. But absolutely, we're trying to get the word out there as much as we can, and Alistair, Sword, and Julie are helping us on that front as well, for the community facing stuff.
And to that, Switch is an able, you know, conduit on that. You know, take today. This video will be posted on our YouTube channel, so, you know, it's the sort of thing that you can refer back to let people see what you're up to in the interim. So happy to do our part on that. Another quick question was, has remote working changed the footprint energy requirements for the buildings?
Yeah. Ultimately, really not that much, because a commercial facility, again, even if we have 2-3 people in an entire building, we still need to maintain the heating and cooling systems for those people. We do have Ministry of Labor requirements of maintaining temperatures within certain thresholds, and you can't really just shut off a building. You'll create moisture issues, mold issues, air quality issues, degradation of the equipment. So unfortunately, we haven't seen a lot of energy requirement reductions from less people, other than maybe a little bit less cooling in the summer because there's not that extra body heat in those areas. But yeah, commercial facilities can't, unfortunately, it's very hard to shut them down.
True enough.
I think the other thing to note is that the city's office environments are pretty consolidated. So while we do see a mix of, you know, hybrid working, there are a lot of people, given all of the different services and different roles and positions. You know, we see a lot of people still in their desks, maybe more so than compared to more traditional office type environments where, you know, work can just be totally completed remotely. We're still seeing a lot of people.
You can't do fire services remotely.
Exactly.
Darko's got his hand up.
Yes, thanks. Just when you mentioned the use of AI and also innovative technologies, did you consider an option, given that in the coming period there will be many more electric vehicles, to use their capacity as a storage with some kind of app that would delegate portion of the battery power?
Yeah, so I know Brent Fowler's team, they're doing a major study with Metrolinx to understand, you know, what the electrification of the buses and the fleet looks like, and you know, there may be some technologies that come out of there for, you know, smart charging and discharging and recharging in different areas. So again, for some of the facilities, not all the EV chargers are connected to buildings. Some of them have their own separate servicing. So over time, I think the answer is probably a maybe there. I don't know what that looks like in the future. I think
maybe maybe I was not clear enough. I meant more about utilizing private vehicles and through the app, where the owner would delegate and say, I allow, for a fee, of course, some kind of 50% of my battery to be used as a storage
Right.
today.
That's something that maybe
Been done in Japan.
the local distribution company may look at something like that in the
Mhm.
future. Utilities Kingston and Hydro One, unfortunately, that's a bit beyond the scope of our
Okay.
facilities team and maybe the municipality. But I think with the idea of innovative partnerships going forward too, I think concepts like this, I think we have to look at everything. So I think it's great that we continue the conversation. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, Kingston has the benefit of, although it's a separate arm's length organization, still Utilities Kingston is different than, let's say, Hydro One. It's far more closer to City Hall, so partnerships
Absolutely.
would be easier.
Oh yeah, and we're definitely exploring all kinds of partnerships and new links between our teams.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I've got a somewhat technical one. You're talking about your, measuring your GHG reductions and everything else. I'm wondering, what are the boundaries that you set for that measurement? I mean, is it just your use, your specific piece of equipment, or are you going all the way back to the source? And this goes back to that, the trend line about, electricity carbon intensity, in Ontario.
That's a very good question. So right now we are only reporting on the energy use within our facilities. So the natural gas use and the electricity use using the emission factors from the grid. So we're not looking at embodied carbon. It's really just end use energy within our facilities.
Okay. Actually, I've got one more. Do you have friendly competition with other cities? And how does Kingston stack up?
Yeah, that's a good question. I know we've done that with our what was it, the ride sharing whatever, I can't remember what that contest was called. So I know our climate leadership group has come up with a number of community programs like that, and that's a great idea. It's not something we have currently, but I really do like that idea, and certainly as a municipality and benchmarking, we're definitely doing that and looking at comparing how our facilities perform with other standard archetypes and at other locations. And I think there's work to do there, just to see how we stack up against other municipalities.
Right. Exactly.
We have had conversations with a few other municipalities, and it does seem that that everyone is kind of trying to take the same approach. Because we are a smaller municipality, I think we got to it first, and there's actually funding coming out through Save on Energy for retro commissioning programs, and a lot of this, the Deep Retrofit Accelerator initiative through the federal government. So not to toot our own horns, but I think we're ahead of the pack.
Yeah, it's a good point, Russell. Because of our size, we've been able to be pretty nimble in the work that we do. And for these types of programs, let's say as compared to Toronto being such a larger portfolio, they've taken a much more top-down approach, not having the resources maybe initially to look at everything from the bottom up in such detail. So we're constantly trying to learn from our colleagues in our cohort with other municipalities.
Okay, I'm cognizant of time here and the fact that we try and go through sector news. The parting comment in the chat is a thank you to Switch for having the presentation today. So I'll take that compliment and share it with the group. And more of this could better serve both our community and Switch. So if there's others on the call today that have similar tales to tell about how the city is doing, we'd be happy to have you do an open session. And we're glad that today's information was a hot topic, as it were.
I see there's one last hand up.
Oh,
Tom.
sorry, did I miss one? Yeah. Tom, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, just further the point about the city and where they are compared to other cities. I just want to applaud them in terms of helping to quantify their energy needs during the recent regional planning with the province. If you're not aware, the province has a requirement every 5 years. We have to do a regional plan across Ontario, and it cycles through the different regions. So Kingston's was up for review around 2020, 21. And the city, as well as other large customers like Queens and National Defense, they all kind of provided us with bottom-up type information. And it was very helpful. I think we sent a pretty strong message about the need on the electrical demand. And meanwhile, many other distributors in the same region, let alone province, were really not believing what we were saying. And you come just 12 months later now, this is the buzz in the industry, and we've been, with the help of the city, we were one of the first utilities throwing that information. And unfortunately, there isn't a lot of vision right now or coordination at the federal provincial level, and it is a bottom-up process, which from a utility point of view, it's very challenging because things are changing very quickly. So thank you.
Yeah, but nimble at the municipal level versus the other levels of government. So that's always a good thing. Anyway, good. We'll get on to sector news. Dan, Russell, thank you ever so much. Again, if people need to reach out, either I'm sure they can find you on the website, or if not, come through Switch, and we'll make sure that we can do the connections. So at this point, we always switch to doing a brief sector news update. We go through a list of sort of sustainable energy topics, and if there's somebody has a thought, bear in mind we've only got about 10 minutes left before the 9:30 close. So anything on fuel cells? I just want to note that there's, I just read something about down in Southern Ontario, there's a 250 megawatt battery farm that looks like it's moving forward. There was a proposal for one actually just north of Picton that from what I've gathered is on hold at the moment, but 250 megawatts, that's a lot of capacity. And wearing my work hat, that's an awful lot of fire hazard if something goes wrong. So, that's a discussion that hopefully these facilities are having on that front. Anything on solar? And bioenergy? EVs? Rosie?
So in 2019, my spouse and I purchased an EV that was a 2019 model. It had 62.5 kilowatt hour battery, and we loved that car. We drove it like a regular car all the time, and had really appreciated it. Really nice car. It died a few days ago, and the battery is gone. It went at 168,000 kilometers, which is 8,000 kilometers over the regular warranty. And we were offered $1,500 as a trade-in. And a new similar vehicle would cost about 60,000. So that was kind of painful. That was 3 years. And so if you do the math, it's like 20,000 a year. So I just wanted to share that. Truth is the daughter of time.
Wow. And I know you have the same type of EV as I do. So now I'm a little scared.
Well, that to pay attention to that 160,000 limit. Like, we live in the country, and so we really wanted to decarbonize our transportation, but we do put a lot of kilometers on.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Wow. And you can't replace the battery pack. I know they're expensive, but is that still the better way?
For 16,000, we could replace the battery, but we'd only get a 20,000 kilometer warranty on it. So that also seemed like an expensive way to go.
Yeah.
You can also look for a used battery. That'd be a little cheaper.
What do you think, Spencer? Would it have any warranty on it?
No, but I don't know the honest answer to that. I'm assuming not. But there have been rare occurrences where people have switched the battery, and even under warranty, what they would do, most EVs manufacturers, they would replace it with a used battery. If you had a warranty issue, you wouldn't get a brand new battery with 0 kilometers on it. Again, that's not a blanket statement. There's a smart battery facility in a cave in Germany that is used as grid storage. And so the batteries are being used to keep them alive, also to balance the grid. So either way, you probably end up with a used battery. So the Leaf was incredible because it got the ball rolling, but it also was the only battery that didn't have a liquid thermal management system, and which is really crucial. It sort of separates EVs from cell phones. We trash cell phone batteries and they die in a year or two, and we expect that to happen to car batteries. But most, other than the Leaf and a few others, they look after the battery because as drivers we can't. I have a quick thing for EVs. Something that I've always theorized was that if you put something rather round shaped at the back of your vehicle, you can increase your range, your efficiency by considerable amount, 20-25%. And Thule, the roof rack company, have come out with a roof rack that connects to the trailer hitch at the very back of the car, and they found that just by having something extra at the back of the vehicle is that it increases range and storage at the same time.
Okay, we'll take it offline on what on earth the physics is on that one, but anyway, very, very cool. Transportation in general. Wind, geothermal. We certainly heard lots today about ground source heat pumps on new builds, and that is absolutely awesome. The way of the future. Water power. Anything in the education front? Conservation. We heard about green buildings today. All the new builds are going there.
Something I recently read
Sure.
about geothermal. I'm not sure exactly how new it is, but it's a company called Ever in Alberta, and they've developed this closed loop geothermal system that is promising for a couple of reasons. One, because of the closed loop nature, there's no possibility of seismic consequences from any heat exchange with the ground. And if you have a minute, check out EAVOR. Really cool. There'll be a cool little infographic that'll pop up. Really interesting geothermal system. I couldn't tell you the specifics about it because I haven't learned too much about it, but in what I read, I found it very interesting.
Cool. Yeah, if anybody wants to follow up on that. Ever, so EVR or EVER or?
EAVOR.
Ah, okay. I wouldn't have got that right. Thank you. Anything more on collaborations or anything else that might be of interest to the group?
One of the things that's happening is in Skeleton Park. I believe it's on the 22nd of April. There's a fair, and Gavin Hutchison and I will be having a booth set up talking about deep energy retrofits and installing heat pumps. We're going to do something similar in Walnut Grove on the 29th, I believe.
Okay, and sorry, when was the first one?
I think it's the 22nd. I have.
Okay. Perfect, thank you on that.
Could I say something too there?
Sure, James, yeah, go for it.
I don't know, they're under communication, education, collaboration. I think it's all of the above.
All
Just
good.
like to say we've got, and I put it in the chat there, we have Dr. John Foley, who is with the Drawdown. Remember the Drawdown magazine that was done, or book that was done by edited by Paul Hawken. And so we have arranged him as a speaker on May the 3rd. Anybody who would like, I can send you the link and you can fire it out if you wish, or if somebody wishes to contact me, my information is there. It's about a 40-minute talk with a Q&A, mostly focused locally. But you know, we all have friends all over the world, so it should be pretty interesting. So you're all welcome.
I just want to mention, if you send us the info, I can put it on our latest news. On
Okay.
the front page.
Do I just send that to the website?
You can send to David, that's fine.
Yeah, if you send it to David at switchontario.ca,
Okay,
I'll get it to Darko. I'll also get it to our social media guru.
Switch Ontario spelled out.
All one word.
All right, got it, David. Thank you.
Sure thing.
Thanks.
Anyway, thank you all. Let's see, Russell's still on. Maybe Dan's had to head to other things. Just like to remind you, I mean, we were a week late this month because of the long weekend, because of Easter. So the next open meeting's coming up very fast. May 3rd, we will be having Neef Montazeri from an energy startup called Inertian. I'm not sure I'm saying that right. They're using an absorption technology for cooling, which sounds like the city's already on that bandwagon. And they're developing sort of integrated heating, cooling, and power production packages by combining this absorption technology with solar PV and maybe solar hot water. I'm not quite sure. Haven't dug in enough. Anyway, sounds like some of the tech started out of the University of Toronto, along with some US collaborators. So we're looking forward to that, and hope there's lots of participation next month on May 3rd. Anyway, with that, we're coming up to the half hour. I'd like to say thank you again for everybody being here today. Certainly thank you to Russell and Dan about their presentation. Absolutely stellar work you're doing, and we appreciate your time. So have a good weekend, everybody.